Hey everyone, welcome back to Making It. We are in the US for the very first time for our very first VidSummit. We've been to a lot of the different panels and talks that are here. We've spent a lot of time out in the hallways and corridors speaking to YouTubers and the behind the scene folk in the creator economy. It's been really cool.
From what?
Cool.
Oh, right.
But it doesn't sound like it's been really cool. Yeah. As you can tell, we're in a pretty bad hotel room. And we're sorry if the audio is not great, but we still wanted to bring you the very first in-person episode. I was going to throw it over to you guys. Like, what's some of your first impressions of being here? Have you found it useful?
So I think the first thought, or the main thought I had on the plane over was, is this going to be valuable?
Mm-hmm.
It cost, what, $800?
Yeah.
And so...
Don't forget the flights and the hotel.
Including flights and hotels. So, and the time, right? It's like almost a whole week. So I think the most valuable thing has been meeting other people we already know of from Twitter. And I suppose having real relationships with them in person, chatting. And all the stuff that happens between the sessions.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been many times where I've been speaking to someone and they mention their name and I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. And then I see their Twitter profile and I'm like, oh, it's that guy. And then you have like this really cool conversation. Because you speak to these people in the past, but it's almost always on topic about YouTube. And so, yeah, it's been really good to kind of have that other side of the coin to their personality. But yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways I've sort of noticed since being here is everyone is like, I don't know if it's an American thing, but everyone seems to think way bigger about the creator economy, about YouTube. And yeah, it's made me kind of like reconsider, hey, what's the goal of the business? Where do I want to be in a year's time? Because when we arrived, there was a lot of people in the line to get your badge, and people were like, what's your goal for VidSummit? Who do you want to talk to? I was just like, I'm here for the vibes, I'm here to meet people and have fun. Do you guys feel that as well? I know like some of you felt that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing I'm desperately trying to capture from this is this like real momentum-y feeling that's come out of it. And like we've been to some tours, right? But we've not. I mean, we've missed the majority of them. I think it's kind of impossible to hit all of them. But even being sat in the ones that feel maybe a bit more surface level, just being surrounded by people that are doing all this stuff. It's like I can picture getting back to the UK and losing that sense of like go-getterness, and I'm trying to figure out how to
bottle it up.
Yeah, how to bottle it up, and just I feel like in the days or like the first week or so getting home after this, I feel like there's a window of time there where I need to just do something to make the most of this kind of inspirational feeling.
Like I was telling Jamie, he was telling me basically what you just said, and I was telling him to maybe record a voice memo or something. Like, Jamie, in the future, this is how you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be like a month's time from now where, I'm just sat eating breakfast or on a walk. I'm going to remember a conversation that I had because I've had so many interesting conversations with so many interesting people the last 2-3 days that like I can't even recall them all. And so I'd be like, furiously writing things down into my notes app to remember some of this, like the thoughts I'm having, some of the things I'm learning from the sessions. But yeah, it's really good. I think I'll definitely come next year because we've spoken a number of times that we need to try and have something very similar in Europe, or if they need to have VidSummit, London, because there's nothing really over there. And like the big pull for me is like meeting new people here. I think it's huge.
So if you're watching or listening and you're wondering, should I go to VidSummit? And if I am going, what should I do? I think my advice would be go, do as much work before you come to sort of set up connections if you have any. You just be like, hey, let's meet. I'm going to VidSummit. I didn't do a tweet like that, but we should have.
Maybe I guess we kind of knew that we would know some people, that we knew we had each other, and like between us we kind of knew some people.
So it was a lot easier going with you two.
Yes.
Because whenever one of us knows someone, everyone gets kind of pulled in
Yeah, that's
and
true.
introduced. But if you don't know anyone, you're probably tweeting about it, saying who you are, and just being very happy introducing yourself to random people you don't know.
Yeah, I've been in many conversations now where like just some random person has kind of come over and said, may I join? And it's so normalized that it's like, okay, yeah, it's totally reasonable to do.
So like VidSummit, big YouTube summit, it's not for fans of creators, but it's for people who are kind of on the inside, who want to learn more about how YouTube works and how to make it a success. Run by a guy called Daryl Eves, co-owned by Mr. Beast and Shimon Lewis, right? And structured as 2 days of talks, and with lots of mingling and interaction in between.
So we showed up the night before. We had some people that we knew. We went for a dinner with them as a kind of like unofficial.
You're saying it, I'm like, what? I'm just trying to remember because so much happens. I'm still jet lagged. Yes, the dinner. That was a really cool evening to meet all these people, and it was a very like specific dinner of everyone who like knew the One of 10 crew. So it was high agency people, I think is like the best way to put it. Like these were all people who were doing very cool things. Very focused group of people, and it was nice to speak with
them. So there are different tribes at VidSummit. One tribe is the kind of strategists. A lot of them were at that dinner were for faceless channels or for gaming channels, so it's less like a creator talking to camera and about whatever it is they're doing. Although there was like Alex Hormozy and Leila Hormozy's producers with that, but it was mainly the faceless guys. And what they do well, it seems, is crunch a lot of data and run a lot of A/B tests and think a lot about how to get like a little bit more performance so they can beat their competitors. Who are the other tribes at VidSummit?
It's interesting. I suppose we wouldn't even know a lot of the time. So like we've recognized plenty of people, and people have recognized us. I mean, that's maybe another thing to talk about from doing this podcast. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's all sorts, aren't there? There's also plenty of people who you've never met before, who you can maybe see a kind of crowd forming around and a conversation happening. You're like, I didn't even know what you do, but clearly it's popular.
So another tribe maybe are small YouTubers or people who want to start YouTube, who are there just kind of starry-eyed. I guess like us as well, just like taking it all in.
I feel like they are like semi-serious / serious though. Because I think if you go to somewhere like VidCon, you do get people who don't have a YouTube channel because they're there for the YouTubers, like they want to have selfies with them and stuff. I think like if you're paying $800 for a ticket and potentially flying to VidSummit and you don't have a YouTube channel, you understand like the opportunity that lies before you for creating content. Like it's very much like this is a smart chess move to play if you want to get into YouTube, because you're literally putting yourself around everyone of who's who in sort of like the behind the scenes world of YouTube. And so I think like the connections that you make here would like dramatically help you in success with launching your very first YouTube channel. Like there are some people I was speaking to yesterday and they don't have a YouTube channel, but the things that they do are really interesting. Or like they're a very successful entrepreneur and like I want to get into YouTube. And so like it's a no-brainer to come here, make those connections, learn what you need to do, go away from this event, implement it over the next year, and then hopefully come back with a successful YouTube channel and then like make more connections and build from there. It's really interesting the different types of people that you get hold of the tribes, as you say. I think one of the cool things actually, if we get a bit meta, is this podcast. Because we've had so many people come up to us and be like, I know you guys from the podcast. And you've got like people who are in the industry who have like really big clients and they're thumbnail designers or they're strategists or they have an agency, and then like I listen to the pod. But then like last night we were at dinner and then like this guy comes up to us. Hello, if you're watching.
Yeah, hi.
It was cool. Thank you.
Yes, he was like, I just want to come over and say hi to you guys. Like I watched the podcast. Like he had his phone ready with like his watch history on his YouTube app and was like scrolling and was like, I watched all the episodes, which is really cool. And for us, it kind of made us think a lot about this podcast. Like, who's our target audience? Who are we making videos for? Because I think so far for this podcast, we've just been making videos. And so it's interesting to see the wide range of people who visit VidSummit and also who are listening to this podcast. Because I think for us, it's very much the strategy for the podcast so far has not been how do we get the most amount of views. It's been like, let's have fun, talk about things that we like, and see what happens. And I think, yeah, we've got like an eclectic bunch of listeners, because it's never been about the views. It's been more about like, can we get the right type of viewer? And I think this trip has definitely confirmed, to me at least, that yes, we do have the right type of listener.
I think that ties into something that's useful for VidSummit, is that you get people's real life opinion of what you do. I've got my phone out a few times and said, hey, what do you think of my channel? In this case, the channel I'm managing. And I get real life feedback from strategists, so people who've watched it already. And that just feels different to getting that over Twitter or something.
So day one, we had our dinner on day 0, turn up on day 1. There's a big queue. You queue up, you get all your kind of registration passes, you get your little gift bag with, what was in there?
Prime, Feastables, some other
Drink
t-shirts,
stuff,
things, yeah.
Socks.
Socks.
That was all very cool. But then actually, I think the one thing we said that we felt we were surprised about is that day 1 that there really isn't anything going on. You turn up, you get your stuff, and then you're basically asked to leave. And so that was kind of, certainly for me, that was a consciousness raising moment of, oh, okay, the majority of the stuff that happens here happens in the hotel just over the road. And that's kind of been the thing that's happened a lot, is like between talks and, you know, if ever you're just needing a bit of downtime, people leave the convention center and go over to the hotel lobby. And that's probably where I've ended up meeting a lot of people, compared, like, you know, I'd say it's like 50-50 with the convention center and the hotel across the road.
So what day 1 we had lunch with Jay Klaus and his producer.
Yeah, that was cool.
Also the thumbnail designer. And I think that was the first particularly interesting interaction we had.
Yeah,
with a face that we knew.
yes.
And chatting our podcasts. I think again I'm trying to remember what we talked about. It's so much. It's so much about just spending time with people and then understanding that other people see things in the way that you do.
Yes.
Maybe it's confirmation bias, but it feels good to just check in on, like, are you doing this thing as well as I am? Yes, we're also doing that thing. Are you thinking about content the same way? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think day 1 was kind of a bit of a, it was just an introduction really, because then a lot of us, like, I know you went for lunch with a client, didn't you, for a while. Me and Gwilym came back to this hotel, we went to the gym, and I think a lot of people did the same thing, because really the only focal point of day 1 is the kind of kick-off party in the evening. And so that's where, I mean, that was probably the most intense socializing of the whole thing, where it's like this sort of rooftopy balcony bit in the convention center. You turn up, there's food, there's a bar, and you're just kind of, I think one of you said it felt kind of like going back to university almost.
Yes, yeah, I did. It felt, very much like you walk into, the university bar or something like that, and you spot your friends or someone that you know from, a lecture or something, and you just go over and you start chatting to them. Because, it's strange to have like this digital world where everyone is sort of there all the time on Twitter or wherever, but they're not physically then. The second you close the laptop screen, they're gone. But here it's like there's this like serendipitous kind of situation that you always just find yourself bumping into someone that you know in the corridor, or someone's like, oh, hey, let me introduce you to this person, and they're like, oh, no way, I didn't know you produced that YouTube channel or whatever, right? And there's just this really cool nature to that. And even just like meeting clients. Like I said, I met Steve, one of my clients, for like 2 years now, and so it was really cool to like meet him in the flesh, go for lunch, and just connect on a different level than YouTube.
Also, so many people we only know from what they say publicly.
Yes.
And it's very different when you've got them in a personal situation, and then they can talk about, I'm not sure about this or that. My business strategy might be changing in this direction or that direction. And so a lot of it is this peek into the future that people don't usually talk about.
Definitely.
It's like the talk that MatPat gave. They were talking about how they were winding up their business and how they couldn't really talk to all their employees about it, and just thoughts about the future. They could talk about that now because it's already happened, but we were getting kind of the opposite thing of people talking about things that will happen in the future that they can't talk about publicly.
Yeah, so that was cool. I guess that was kind of day one, wasn't it? It was basically just about getting registered, party in the evening, any conversation in the middle is on you. But then day two, I guess, it was you know, it starts, right? So in the morning, there's this kind of big, so there's a main convention room with a big stage, and all the kind of main talks happen in there. And there was a big kickoff, opening remarks type thing from Daryl Eves, who's the founder, and that then pretty much flowed into the start of the talks. And so one thing that I found quite nice, because that main convention room is so big, is that, and kind of with any of the talks, you can sort of sidle in and sidle out as you feel it's necessary. You're not obstructing anyone's view, you're not in the way. And so like, I feel that we've kind of dipped in and out of certain talks, just based on schedule sometimes, or maybe we want to talk about it sometimes. Some of the talks feeling a little bit either sometimes surface level, or maybe it just doesn't apply directly enough to you, and you think, okay, this is a pretty good talk, but for me, I don't know how much value I'm getting from it.
I think there are two things I'd say about the talks. One is that everyone who's there is very used to being behind a screen and consuming content, and sat there watching talks sometimes does feel like you're just consuming content passively and you're not interacting with anyone, which is, for a lot of people, I think the point of the convention is to interact with people, to see and be seen. So that's one thing. And another one is, basically agreeing with what you're saying, that they're trying to cater for a wide audience. I think we also see this on the podcast. Like, sometimes it's easy to just not clam up, but you just kind of think you say the basic theory of something. And I think the talks that I liked the most were when they were giving more specific examples and case studies, and this is what I did.
I agree. I mean, that's one of the things I said to you guys. I was like, I think the majority of the talks would dramatically be way more actionable for most people if almost all of them were case studies, or have like a storytelling narrative to them of like, we hit this problem, this is how we solved it, on to the next. Hopescape's talk at the beginning, I saw sort of the last 20 minutes of that. That was really good. I want to catch the replay of that. But like, that type of talk, I think, is like the perfect kind of thing for VidSummit. I do think, you kind of have like the curse of knowledge, right? Like, you come to a YouTube event, you work in YouTube, and it's about educating beginners. You're probably not going to learn a lot of new stuff because you're in it, you know? But I think, if you're a beginner, if you don't have a YouTube channel, you're in those early stages, like, there's probably a lot of value that you can get from these talks. I think if I was a beginner and I learned the information that I've heard the last few days, it would dramatically speed up the process to success. So I think like that's a key component if you are thinking of going to VidSummit as a beginner or small channel. I think if you're behind the scenes and you're already in this industry, like talking to people is going to be like way more valuable for you.
That's kind of one of my big takeaways, is that I guess it depends what they should be targeting it at, in quotes, where like, I think I turned up expecting, even, the fact that there will be beginners here as well and people who don't have channels and whatever, I think I just thought this is going to be the most concentrated group of people who are obsessed with YouTube, kind of no matter what stage they're at, but like they're gonna know a lot of stuff already. And like, I think I would love a version of this conference where pretty much every talk accepts that this is going to be inaccessible for maybe 10% of the people that currently would find it accessible, but you can get really into the meat, and the people that are already industry insiders who've already got years of experience will like really learn something super exciting. And there have been moments like that, definitely, in all of the talks, and all of the talks that I've seen have been presented well and whatever. I think I just wanted, just like a little bit more revelation in some of them. But I totally get if they want to be broad with who they're targeting, then that's not necessary. But I kind of almost wish it was just like a little bit narrower. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably hard to, like, when you're sat there, with a blank presentation screen, and you're like, okay, I've got to build out the 45-minute presentation. what am I talking about? Who am I talking to? You're going to think, let me try and help as many people as possible, which then tends to lean more towards the beginners than the intermediates and advanced. And again, like it's kind of meta in that this podcast, we've created a number of different episodes where the videos that get the most amount of views are the ones for the beginners, but we don't really go into the intermediate and advanced strategies that we're using on our clients, because it tends to be too advanced for a lot of people who are like, what's my niche? How do I write a good hook? You know?
Also,
and so
you're sticking your neck out more in some sense. If you're talking about very advanced stuff, it's often
it's more nuanced.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm somewhat sure about this. Maybe it's working. We're still trying it out.
Yeah.
Would I recommend it? Maybe.
Yeah, you don't want to give advice to everyone when it's different depending on the niche, if you're entertainment, if you're education, what your goal is. There's so many factors in YouTube, and I do think that's why working with someone who understands YouTube one-on-one, in a consulting setting or strategy, sometimes can actually be really beneficial, because you get prescribed advice, that's applicable to you and your goals, as opposed to watching a YouTube video where a YouTuber says, here's 10 tips to grow on YouTube, and they're really broad, and sometimes it actually work against you to implement a certain style of content or strategy. So I can see how that can impact things like the talks.
So on the one hand, I think the conventional wisdom is podcast actually just dump people in at the deep end. People would probably enjoy it more if we did have just in-depth conversations about the pros and cons of certain niche things, because if you listen enough over time, you just build up the understanding. Just like you sat at your parents' dinner table or whatever when you were 4, and you kind of just pick stuff up. But the other thing I got was, on a meta level, I was learning how you present your ideas as someone who is a YouTube expert or whatever, talking to a wide public. And I think that the superpower is having this coherent view of how you see YouTube, what your take is on your specific thing, and being able to say that convincingly. Because sometimes what people need is just a framework that's gonna work. It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all framework, but it does work in many cases.
It's like solving a narrow problem.
Yeah, or just even saying, but if I said this is my acronym for like how to write a hook, you need this, this, and this, and this. It's not going to be the same as George's acronym, but it's probably going to get like 80% of the job done.
Yeah, I see that. Well, it's kind of like I said to you in a taxi the other day. It's like, I guess the point is to just spark some thoughts in somebody's head, and you obviously can't fix everyone's problem with one talk, but as long as it gets them thinking, but then like I think the example that I keep giving, and I've talked to you about already, is like I feel like Justin Moore's workshop, and I think the workshops probably lend themselves to this more than the talks. There's maybe like a general plan. I've only been to one workshop. I know you went to a workshop after me, but there were a couple of others. In fact, there's one today I really want to catch on hiring. Is like in those smaller group environments, you get a really good opportunity to see them quickly give the theory, and then do it in action. So in the case of Justin Moore, sponsorship guy, he was like, okay, here's how I think about sponsorships very broadly, but now like hands up, tell me, okay, what's your channel? What's your dream brand that you'd like to pitch? Okay, here is how you comb through their Instagram, comb through their LinkedIn. This is the pitch, and then literally does it live on screen, and then is like, this is the pitch that I would do. You can take that away and pitch them exactly that. And then he just did that with a bunch of different people. And so even though, again, it's like, these are now hyper specific because no one's dream brand is going to be the same. You start to see in action how he's using those soft skills to pitch brands. So like I really like that sort of thing. And I think the workshops are probably best for getting those skills up.
Yeah, the thumbnail workshop we went to after that, so some nuggets of wisdom were, actually what surprised me was that the new A/B testing feature from YouTube, the word on the street seems to be that if you use it, it lowers by some amount the impressions that your video gets. And that the YouTube insider that the speaker had spoken to before said, I believe, Jamie, you were there as well, so you can say, I thought they weren't sure.
Jamie didn't like
The YouTube insider was saying they're not quite sure why that is, but it does seem to lower your impressions.
Is that versus using a tool like TubeBuddy or something?
They didn't get into that, so I'm not entirely sure.
They were largely talking about YouTube's own A/B testing tool in that talk. It was like the piece of advice that I got, I heard during the first day that sort of broke my brain a little bit, and I was a bit like, okay, that's interesting. Is that real or not, right? Because it wasn't just that. It was, they kind of went on to say, this YouTube employee, which we won't name, and this is 100% true, guys. Like, it was really like, this is 100% true. And so I was like, sit up in my seat, like, oh, what's this? And he sort of said the YouTube employee has said that the A/B testing tool is not meant to be used for every single video. It's meant to be used every now and again to kind of help you find what your audience likes to click on, and then you just implement that into your thumbnails. Now, to me, that's very interesting, because that would not, in my eyes, that doesn't make sense. If it's A/B testing, I believe having a tool like that should be for every single video. You A/B test 2 or 3 thumbnails, and it gives you the correct answer for that specific video, rather than just use it every now and again and kind of have some interpretations. Because I think the interpretations that you take away from those thumbnails, if you did it once a month, once every 2 months, is not often enough. I think most beginners won't really have a clue, or they might take away the wrong interpretations, which then affects their entire thumbnail strategy. If you look at any other kind of A/B testing, whether that be like a newsletter subject line or a web page that allows you to do A/B testing, it's not used in that manner of just use it every now and again and kind of see what works. It's very much like use it, get the results. And obviously, I've made videos where, yes, you should absolutely test thumbnails periodically, every 2 weeks, every month, and you will generally see trends and patterns that your audience tend to click on, which is useful. And you should write that down in like a Notion database or a Notes app. But to kind of say to an audience of people who might not know any better, don't do this for every video. Don't really, I don't know. It felt a bit odd, that advice. And so maybe they're right.
Or does advice from YouTube or from the people who give
From
them the
YouTube,
tool?
for an employee to
But
say
they
that, it
don't
kind of
say
felt like they
that
don't even
publicly.
know how to use their own tool.
But that's the weird thing, is they don't say it publicly, and the question is, why do they say that, rather than saying some people can use it all the time, other beginners can use it sometimes because it's less hassle. But it seems the reason they're saying don't use it all the time is it lowers your impressions.
Right, but
they
there's
don't say
reasons
that
for that,
publicly.
there's reasons for that, which I put in a recent newsletter. But I think when you just give broad advice to a room of people like that, without much context or explaining why it potentially leads to low impressions / views, people confuse. All my thing is thumbnails. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing. And this advice was like, okay, there's a lot to think about here and process. But I think to a beginner, they're just going to take that knowledge. I think the tool is obviously still a beta tool. And so to, this YouTube employee, they still might be trying to work out the kinks of it, how it actually works. We don't really know how it works. It kind of is like watch time share, and nothing to do with click-through rates or any other metrics that you might get with like thumbnailtest.com or TubeBuddy's A/B testing tool. It was a bit of a strange advice for me. I think it was mostly how it was delivered rather than the actual content. But
Delivered
we'll
by
see.
who? The workshop person.
Yeah, it was kind of like just the 3 of them were sort of jumping in between throughout that entire presentation, and in that moment, one of them like chipped in to what the main one was saying, and it didn't seem like it was a thought out, like let's explain this to people. It was kind of like, oh, by the way, we recently heard by someone, and this is like 100% true with this employee, and I don't know, it just felt a bit offhand.
Yeah, I mean, if I'd heard that just before I gave my workshop talk, I'd probably chuck it in there and just say, hey guys, this is an unknown.
But they didn't say it's an unknown. They said this is 100% true, guys. This is
As in,
fact.
it's not known if it's good to use. But yeah.
This sounds like an outlier, certainly in terms of the talks and workshops. Like, that most of them have been, like that's the only one I've heard of that you've kind of left feeling a bit like, I wasn't expecting that.
And it might be legit advice.
Yeah.
It's just not what I've heard so far.
And this is why it's difficult talking about complicated topics, because it ends up with us pinging back and forth. And my current takeaway is still use the YouTube A/B testing, but maybe just don't chuck everything at it all the time.
You have to remember, most beginners who use the A/B testing tool are just like, they'll have like a really good thumbnail, and then you go, oh, I need a second thumbnail to A/B test with, and then they make like a really crappy poor version just to A/B test with, and then of course it's going to result in lower views because like half your audience is going to see the crappy version too, and not click. You know, so yeah, it's going to reduce your views. It really depends how you use the tool.
Any other kind of standout talks, workshops, conversations that you guys have had?
I would say anyone who's listening who's a little bit more advanced in the YouTube game and is thinking about hiring, check out the MatPat hour if you have access to the replays. I thought it was very good. I learned a lot of things. So I obviously have an employee, which I thought was, you know, the tips they were giving was useful to have, you know, a year and a half ago when I was beginning to hire. I think, yeah, if you're thinking about it or you have employees, it's a good one to check out. Really in depth, quite actionable. Talk, I quite like that one.
I'd say if you're somewhat beginner to medium level, the Jon Youshaei talk was a good primer on how to ideate, how to think about, you know, really what hits home. Particularly the advice around, is there a key visual for your video? Could this be an article? So he was saying like,
that was the biggest thing I took.
Yeah, he was interviewing a guy who makes these crazy like Iron Man helmets, a giant Thor's hammer, things like that. And he said, I wanted into this guy because I knew I could get crazy visuals throughout.
And the book he showed us looked insane. I was like, I want to watch the video now. Yeah,
him with Thor's hammer, the guy like summoning Captain America's shield, and that made me think more about visuals when you're kind of trying to figure out, is this the best idea? If you've got two very similar ideas and one has better visuals, then go for that.
Yes, one of the things that I hope John won't mind us revealing, which I'm sure he'll probably post the full thing anyway, so it might be on his channel by the time this releases, was like this whole thing of like, if you have a video idea and you're sat in a coffee shop with a friend and you're trying to explain this video idea, do you grab a napkin and draw something? You know, is there a key visual, or do you say, oh, it's like this, and you have to get your phone out to Google an image or to show a video to explain this thing to someone? If you do that, then yes, there's probably key visual elements, whether that be animations or actual physical things that you can film, that lend itself to a good video. If not, then yeah, it probably should be a newsletter or an X post or a LinkedIn post. So that I think was like the biggest thing that I took from that. I think it was a really cool segment.
And again, he was getting that from Cleo Abram, and she's from the Vox school, and the whole Johnny Harris of look at this thing. And again, a recurring thing is we kind of knew this already, but it's so useful to have it said again to you in a convincing way, and you're like, oh, that's bumped up to top of mind, because it is very important.
Yeah. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. If you want to get some more insider information on how Jamie creates a repeatable format which lets his clients' videos get views year after year after year, you can check out this video right here.
On Jamie's face.